Right, and with that, we will jump into our deck selection screen here. It's a lot of multicolor coming out from both players.
Lots of Rakoans, I can imagine, looks to be a popular deck in competitive right now, which I think is fantastic. I love tribes. I love the Yaks as well. I really hope that the Yaks would pick up one day, but it's nice to see Rakoans coming down. We already have a quick ban coming from exploring there. What looks to be, was that red blue?
Red yellow, I
Red
believe it
yellow.
is. Yeah.
So red yellow being taken out, so that's burn. Just get rid of that burn deck. Burn decks in tournament can be terrifying depending on what they match up against. They can snowball really quickly. What would you like to see ban wise for Martus? Like what's his choices?
It's a tough one in this spot because you have that Rakoans, which we saw banned by both players in the previous series. You have the green-red there as well, which we saw be very good for Neuron. So I'm leaning more towards those. This lineup from Exploring looks really strong. You have the green-yellow sack in there, and the blue, looks like blue Triton Jump, which can just end games super quick as well. And then the sack has the late game. It's really difficult because of what Martus has. That red-yellow I think is more of a control because of the high average cost. I'm actually unsure if one of those is a Rakoan or if it's going to be an OTK coming out from Martus, but this is really tough. I think I still lean towards like the blue jump as being the earliest deck, and you just end up playing late game versus late game decks.
Traditionally, I've always been scared of green yellow sacrifice in tournament play. It's just one of those decks that may not be the best on ladder, but once it gets into the competitive format, it can be a dominating deck that's very difficult to deal with because there's so many different matchups spread across the four decks in your lineup. It's had a lot of success in the history of Fury, and that's probably the deck I would ban because I don't want to have to deal with those Soul Eaters. But we're going to see the green red being banned here. So just eliminate potentially the highest removal based deck that Exploring had to offer. And this may be because, like you said, there could be some OTK decks or something that's more vulnerable to removal. So he's banned that out, making sure that damage from hand isn't available.
All right, and here we are into game number 1 of round 3, Exploring versus Martus. We do have a blue-yellow coming out from Martus with the Baron Sky Vermin in there. This could be the OTK that's been creeping up a lot recently, whereas we definitely have a green-yellow, but it may not be sack. It may just be more of a tempo deck coming out from Exploring, actually.
I do believe he mulliganed a Soul Eater there, so I think the Emerald Jack's purpose is just to put more stuff on the board and generate the power on those Soul Eaters. We see Lionfish, so we could potentially see Iona's Smile. So maybe it's a more flying based green yellow sack here. Just get lots of flying creatures down, be able to tutor those Soul Eaters at win condition. Whereas Martus, I believe he went for the. Is this the Rakoan deck then? So yeah, he's gone for the Rakoan deck yet. I have no idea how people build these, so it's going to be a surprise for me.
Yeah, this will be an interesting one. If it is the Rainbow TK that it kind of looks like it is right now, I will explain more of how that works. Okay, so and there's the Gagana picked up. So this deck has been popping up a lot recently, and it is really the development of the OTK of Cannoneers dealing 9 damage to the orb. You have your Biomancer to cycle all of your creatures into your hand, and then you essentially play the combo of Gagana, Dream Reaver your opponent, feed the forest on Dream Reaver to get all that Faria back, and then Cannoneer, 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 and a Baron Sky Vermin is the 10 damage OTK combo. Big thing in this matchup is that Exploring will be putting enough creatures on the board that Martus will be able to draw with the Biomancer. So it'll be very important for Exploring to recognize early on what he needs to do in order to push a little bit of early tempo.
Yeah, we can see Explorer moving up the wells here, but he's not going into the wells for that Faria generation. Just straight up apply that pressure. Make sure those creatures can come down, start putting pressure on the orb. That's the goal here. Explorer just needs to get up close and start beating that life down and try and win before this combo goes.
And the far side is actually a pretty big creature for Martus to have down with that Spring Mochi there, because the extra Faria that I believe the combo needs something like 14 Faria to be guaranteed every time, something around that. So having the far side collection ensures that you have enough of a Faria pool to at least start the combo, and then you can get the Feed the Forest to refresh your Faria pool to complete the combo.
And right now, we're still seeing that push up. We do have some collectors for Martus, so he's able to generate some Feria before they get taken out by these creatures. And I think the most interesting thing about exploring stack for me so far is the hand buff variant of this sacrifice. So maybe it's not so much green yellow sacrifice, like you said, it's more kind of like mid range tempo oriented using these hand buffs, but it also has those soul eaters as a win con if needed.
Right, this is actually a phenomenal hand for exploring right now to have the Verdant Emissary on board because the +1/1 onto Lionfish gives it the attack buff to actually be able to kill things with the Death Touch. It gives the life to Ghost Dragon to be able to survive when you play it, and getting the 4 attack onto Wind Soldier can be a big thing in certain matchups.
Ghost Dragon becoming a creature, a cheap creature that you can put down with mobility. It's going to have a high attack stat, so it's not going to be easy to remove for Martus if the smaller creatures start getting cleared by the creatures marching up the right hand side. So these Ghost Dragons could be very important
I'm so
in
smart,
finishing
I
off the game.
astound myself.
And there we go. It is the full combo in hand now for Martus. He needs the extra lands for Dream Reaver to actually be able to be played. Currently sitting on 5. The Vine Wall will be 6. So that means next turn, I believe he can end the game.
I've never seen this combo before. It's completely new for me. We're going to see a Topaz Yak come down. Oh, and nice to see some Yaks. I was talking about Yaks earlier, but like you said, it's probably too late. He didn't have, because he had to build the special lands to get anything going. It gave Martus all the time in the world to develop this OT.
Yeah, and a big thing there as well, exploring clearing off the creatures actually helps Martus's combo. He's not going to get the collection on the top right well, but it is a deck. This OTK is one that suffers sometimes from not having enough lands to actually play all of the creatures down that you need for the combo. But I believe he has exactly what he needs right now.
Does he need to draw another Rakoan first before he can start
Oh,
triggering
yes, true.
the
He
kind
will
of?
need the Rakoan because the Biomancer was just cleared by exploring.
But the Gagana can generate a Rakoan as well, depending on what you get. It's got a Reveler on there. Is there any other Rakoans that
I think Reveler is the only one. I'm trying to think of what all of the crew that can pop out of Gagana there.
So there's Trainer, there's Gami Warrior,
I think
you
Tiki
have
Caretaker
Tiki
is one of
Piper.
them, or Piper.
Yeah, it is the Piper, and then you have the Reveler, Storyteller Cartographer. I can't remember which one it is. There's a lot of different things that can come from Gagana, so you could just roll the dice here and just try and find the Reveler. But it might be like 1 in 6, 1 in 7 from what I can remember. So he might just go for a strategy of play like Lore Thief, cycle through and find that last Rakoan to be able to make the combo and win the game.
Yeah, and exploring at this point doesn't really have the extra oomph that he needs to be able to end the game. All of these creatures are just small at this point. If he had something like a Verteran Force in here, it could actually represent killing Martus before he's able to pop off this combo, but is going to be just continuing to put pressure on. Maybe we see that Ghost Dragon come down. Spirit of Rebirth is another good one because it'll continue to put buffs into the hand.
I think one of the issues this deck has in this matchup, I think against any kind of mid-range deck, any normal control deck, anything but combo really, your Vidran emissaries are going to die, and you're going to get that value. But here, Martus can just choose to ignore it. You can just be like, oh well, I'm not going to give you the +1/+1 and help you win. And we could just see problems being coming up now if he draws that Rakoan, and he doesn't. So it's tricky actually. We were saying Martus had it all, but clearing that Biomancer may have cost him the game.
Yeah, very true. At this point, the Biomancer is so important to start off the combo. The other step at this stage will be if Martus maybe can find the extra Barren Sky Vermins, because if it is playing 3 Vermins, that can be an extra bit of burst. What did he get from... Ooh, the Storyteller is what came down.
It is card draw. So it could potentially find the Biomancer. It's a 0 cost here, but it gives him life, so it pushes him outside of the OTK range. So Storyteller actually not a good pickup here. Oh,
And
and
there
there it
is the
is.
Biomancer. I was going to say, even though the Storyteller, yes, would put him out of range, Martus has the extra Dream Reaver in hand, which I think he could still pop off the same way with a Dream Reaver and another Feed the Forest. But in this situation, it is, I think, just a land restriction. I think he has to feed again because
I
he
was
doesn't
just
have the lands
thinking,
available right now.
do you not do anything this turn? Do you just pass and just see if there's lethal at 16 life? But he Dream Reavered himself instead of Dream Reaving Exploring again. So he would have been on 16 life. Can you get lethal? It's actually more likely to get lethal here if there's power ups, but unfortunately, Exploring doesn't have access to that. He has the Wind Soldier, but he needs the board to be cleared in order to get that damage. So it still might be Martus's game, even with that kind of shaky rope at the end there.
Yeah, it definitely was. I think Martus last second realized he didn't have either enough time to figure out all of the lands that he needed. So exploring here does have a lot of power, but yeah, can't push enough through to the orb.
That's really unfortunate for Exploring because Martus, had the decision to make, right? He had to make a decision. Does he wait for the combo on the next turn and maybe set up some defenses? Make kind of like a kind of a knee-jerk reaction with the Dream Reaver, killing his own life, maybe thinking he had enough time, but didn't. So there was no real punish for it, unfortunately. And we're going to see probably Martus take the game. Will he have enough lands? Is double neutral enough at this point?
I think he does just because he has the Feed the Forest, so he can generate all the extra Faria off of the Dream Reaver. And it really only needs, I believe it's 3 lands, because you need the Biomancer, then the first Cannoneer, and then you can swap those lands back and forth, and then you end up with an open land at the end for the Barren Sky Vermin.
I'm so smart,
and Gagana being able to fly as well, that's also very useful. You can just do it. And yeah, this is going to be game now. He's going to be able to just keep sacking the Rakoans, and then boom, he's going to have that. Will he have enough Faria? 2, 4, 5? Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, should be able to cycle enough back with Feed the Forest onto the Dream Reaver. Had the 1 left over for it. He was just planning it all out, make sure he had everything here.
Who invented this deck?
I don't want to say that it was Werfs who invented it, but he definitely has been the one pushing the archetype. He's done videos on it, he's been streaming it a lot, and I believe they even brought it as part of the team event when they were playing in it. But I don't think it was this level. Amaz just in the back there saying Choir invented it, so we'll give the proper credit where due.
All right, it's just very interesting. Like these cards have been out for some time, and now it's being discovered that you can use the Rakoans and maybe the Faria reduction. Did they give a Faria reduction to Cannoneer? Was he like a 3 Faria?
Cannoneer recently was a 3 Faria 3/2, and it changed to a 2 Faria 2/2. So that kind of is what propels the combo to be able to pop off even earlier, because you don't need as much Faria investment into it. But it's interesting, the OTKs have been progressing. There was Ruby Yak OTK, there was Cannoneer and Flame Bursts as a 20 damage OTK, and then now it's gone to this stage where it is the Gagana in there to make everything wild, the Dream Reaver to set your opponent to 10, and then all the burst damage.
Blue has traditionally been a color that has enabled a lot of OTK in the past. Remember the Ninja Toad OTKs used to have back in the day? Like that, blue was a big part of that, being able to gain lots of economy through windfalls and stuff. So it's no surprise to see blue being the culprit for developing this deck.
Right, and it's kind of an awkward deck as well. I mean, if everything goes the way that you want, it's very easy to pull off the combo. We saw in that game, Martus played a Biomancer at the end of the game with 10 cards left in his deck, and it didn't draw anything. The entirety of the rest of the deck was support cards like Wild Growth, Shifting Tide, Vine Wall, essentially what we see in the deck, in the hand right now for Martus. So if you end up with basically junk, you can have a hand that really doesn't allow you to pop off with the combo. But in this type of setup, everything is fueling the late game. So you have your early card draw, you have the Biomancer for mid to late game card draw, and then the combo package itself.
So during crunch time, when your opponent's near your orb, you're looking for that like last one or two pieces to finish off. The deck does have some bloat, I guess, because it, like I said, it's all gearing towards this combo. And you can see now Shifting Tide's actually been very useful, just pushing back this little frog here so he can't jump over, and just giving Martus an extra turn of Fairy Generation and be able to retreat defensively and keep his Harvester.
Right, it's the defensive setup here, can go for the Wild Growth. If that sets up properly, he can get the Vine Wall down and protect it even more. Exactly like that, so could be a Vine Wall come down, and that's actually difficult for Exploring to clear off early on here.
Yeah, he needs like some extra gas, something like an Aurora. He does have the Phantasm, so he can clear it, but he loses the mobility as a cost. And right now, is nowhere near the orb, and giving Martus all the time he needs, and the more creatures he develops to try and clear vine walls, it plays into that Biomancer, like you said earlier. So it has a lot of, it's very well built, this deck. You know, it's got a lot of good synergies. The style of play and how your opponent reacts to it, it all kind of links up very nicely.
And we see Exploring jump forward here. Looks like he is going to go for the Mirror Phantasm. Now, the Phantasm clears the Vine Wall right now and allows continued pressure to push up the board here, because otherwise it's 2 turns to clear the Vine Wall, and then you can't get at this creature. But it does lose the jump for Exploring, so he's not able to push to the orb as quickly. But at this point, it's clear the creature and then continue to work up the board from there.
That was a good draw from Martus there. He can still get the land ramp from Wildgrowth, so not too afraid of having to develop lands. He's in that range now with the Dream Reaver Gargana combo. I really like just slamming down Vine Wall. I guess one Biomancer's pretty good for Finning, but I wouldn't actually mind just putting down Vine Wall and passing here and seeing if Explore will overextend, but he's actually going to keep the Vine Wall maybe for later on where he needs some defense.
Yeah, that definitely looks like Martus is going to want to slow down the potential damage that could come through to the orb here. Because of the way that the Wild Growth land positioned, Exploring can actually get an aggressive lake and get potentially the Tidalord that we see in hand down and start to put pressure on the orb. And then Martus is going to need that taunt at that stage.
Being able to summon on an opponent's land is also tricky. We've seen in the previous game that land requirement for the creatures that come down can be awkward. We do see the Vermin being picked up, so the Biomancer won't have to search for that anymore. It only can hit 3 targets, which is a little bit of a shame because it does kind of whiff a draw for Martus. He kind of misses that draw that the Biomancer would have tutored for him anyway. So it's looking tough. You know, this blue jump is definitely getting some momentum going, unlike last game.
Yeah, the Biomancer there, really nicely timed by Martus. He had essentially emptied his hand on everything else, able to get the Biomancer for a big swing of draws there, but kind of draws the wrong pieces. You want kind of the setup, and then your second Biomancer to get all of these Cannoneers. If he had drawn a Dream Reaver there, I think he's much more likely to have the combo to start with the Dream Reaver feed, and then Biomancer to draw all of the burst damage, instead of this way where he's drawn the burst damage and he can't really get those out of his hand now.
Fortunately for Martus, he does have a good Vine Wall setup here. Like the 6 damage is probably going to go into that taunt and not to the orb this turn. If Explorer drawn, say, a Mythmaker or maybe another Phantasm, he could double neutral, jump the 2/2 over, do the transform, and then push that 6. But the Vine Wall definitely buying time here.
Exploring also with the Emperor's Command in hand could have just used that.
Oh yeah, I guess so, yeah.
It's one of those that people usually don't end up using Emperor's Command for damage to a structure, at least anymore, now that we don't really see library decks. Even Haunted Husk, we obviously haven't seen it at all today. Maybe it's fallen a little bit out of favor. But in that situation, Exploring could have double neutraled across, or even just created another lake on the far side there, jump the 2/2 toad over and use the Emperor's Command, and push that 6 damage exactly like you're saying.
But now we see the pressure, right? We got these creatures swarming around the orb. It's going to be tricky. Goes to the draw, does find the Dream Reaver. Wow. If he needed to draw anything right there, it was the Dream Reaver. Now, will he have enough fairy? Oh, it's a one fairy
+9.
Dream
I
Reaver.
think
This is lethal,
this
right?
is lethal. The only thing I'm unsure of is if Martus has the lance, but I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think those 2 is all he needs. Dream Reaver, Feed the Forest, clears the open land, Biomancer, and then Cannoneer back and forth on the same land, leaves 1 at the end for Barren Sky Vermin. I think this is exactly correct.
Also gets the extra land here from feeding the Cartographer, Explore, gain an additional Faria. Goes to the wait.
I'm so smart.
I guess he's just gonna
astound
feed
myself.
the Cartographer here, right? Wait. What's going on?
Yeah, that's entirely a misplay.
So that
That, I believe, was
the game,
lethal.
right?
I think even without having to play the Biomancer, that was lethal.
Yeah, so you can play Cartographer feed. I think
The
it's
Feed the Forest off the Shifting Tide. It's just max BM coming out from Martus. He knows what's coming. But he doesn't have the Biomancer. He doesn't have the start of the combo.
yeah. This is it. I thought he would have just jammed Biomancer, pew 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 pew, play a Cartographer, feed it, play the Explore, and then bam, Vermintide comes down and wins the game. But Martus not as experienced with this deck as I thought, and then just goes to throw the game there. Unfortunately, combo decks are tricky though. Sometimes there's lots of things you calculate in your head throughout the entire process of the game, and then when it comes to that kill turn, I've done it many a times. You guys will know. I just brain fart. I'm just like, uh-oh, I missed part of my sequence in here and lost the game.
Yeah, it definitely can be, as you said, combo decks. You have to be familiar with the way that the entirety of the deck plays out. Not just the fact that you're bringing it to a tournament because you think it's strong. It needs to be, I know all of the ins and outs. You need to know the specific matchups so that you know when you need to be greedier for something like the Shifting Tide movement that Martus did early on, which was really nicely played, instead of keeping that for potential card draw later on. Something like that, and some of the early plays were so well done by Martus, but then the actual execution of the combo just looks like maybe he's not as familiar with the exact sequence needed.
Yeah, the sequencing of the finish for the combo decks is usually like the thing you have to practice. Like it becomes muscle memory or almost. You look at your hand, you look at the board, you're right, boom, 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 you're dead. And it does take playing that deck over and over again, being in that situation where you do have lethal and doing the correct sequence and getting it ingrained into your head where the combo decks become more consistent. So a little unfortunate for Martus, but like I said, he may not have as much experience, or he maybe was just a little nervous because of all the pressure around him. But exploring taking that game now, we're going to see another combo deck. I do see some fishies in hand that can be multiplied and flooded. Is that a combo deck too?
Yeah, this definitely looks like it is, at least for now, the makings of a Carassius creation deck. Interesting to see the Rakoans in there, but it just is a maybe flood everything out, and then you're eventually looking to just pile up the board with the Carassius.
Carassius, he's been around for a long time. He was once a yak, but then became a fish, and you can still flood the board with it. I've seen it. I've seen it so many times where if you're not playing red and you don't have a slot for Garadan, your whole board gets full of.
Yeah, this is definitely a deck where it's kind of on exploring to set the pace. If he's able to put the pressure on early enough in the game here, he's actually able to take early advantages in beneficial ways and then get to the Wave Crash Colossus and push damage towards the orb. But if Martus is able to continue to push that pressure back and not allow the collection and not allow the creatures to really survive on the board, he can eventually get to the point where the Swarming Carassius gets 2 down, gets 3 down, gets 4 down, continue to put more and more that just body block and then trade as efficiently into the Battletoads and just set up enough creatures that actually prevents Blue Jump from doing really anything.
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest problem, the Swarm, right? Blue Jump is known for its ability to put a lot of small mobile creatures down and apply pressure that way. But this deck, while it doesn't have the mobility, it does have that kind of flood aspect to it, thanks to the Carassius. And we do see the Demon Wrangler kill the Carassius, get that sack off. And that's quite important against blue because what blue will like to do if they have access to it is frogify them, so to limit the amount of Carassius that can spread in the early game.
Yeah, now we see Exploring in a bit of a tough spot. Could go for the Triton Trainer, but has to come down really defensive if he wants it to survive until next turn. And now it's really dependent on if Exploring is able to pick up another creature, because Martus is now, with the cards in hand, having the ability to actually flood, like we've been talking about, and that actually puts more pressure, more creatures on the board for him than the blue jump who just played Battletoads.
Yeah, good old Battletoads then. I don't think Explorer minds just throwing the 3-2 away here. He does have the Myth Maker, so he may be able to kind of bait a play where the Frog can jump in, the Battletoad, get the 6-6, and, apply pressure once again. But Martus, just playing safe here. Just going to move back. He doesn't want to run into that Frog and its potential buffs that it can get from Phantasm and stuff. And it might just be Colossus here. Just pay the 6 Faria, and that's not bad for a 7/7. Green does it all the time.
Yeah, especially drawing the second one there, you're kind of forced into going Wave Crash Colossus. If it had been anything else, you want to play that other creature, get the Colossus as discounted as possible, and then play it. In this situation, the 7/7 actually represents a lot of potential power for Exploring, but the second Carassius coming down for Martus means that just trades in, and the next Carassius will actually have more power than the Colossus can deal with. And then Martus can just take bad trades because you're putting more on board than Blue can keep up with.
And that's one of the things Exploring is struggling with his hand right now. He has that extra Colossus, sure. That's not bad, but once that Colossus dies, if he starts drawing utility and not ways to flood the board and keep up with that pace that Martus can establish, it could be very tricky for him going forward.
We do see the Astanu as well in hand for Martus. Couple lands away, I think, still. No, just one land now, so does have a couple 1/1s that would be beneficial to get into that. You don't really want to trade the transform the Carassius into a Stanu, because then they're not actually dying the next time that you play a Carassius down. But it kind of is a wonky hand for Martus here, where if he has to go Failed Experiment into a Stanu next turn, he's not putting more creatures down. It can be a situation where Exploring can then push.
Yeah, those failed experiments can be quite clunky depending on how the board is reacted to here. So he's actually just going to push the 1/1, make that aggressive leg. That could be helpful later on, but the key here is killing the 3/4. We saw Martus invest a 1/1 just the body block. So it's nice to see he's got that mobility, being able to move that land, and can just ignore the fish. Let the fish do their own. Let them kill themselves. You don't want to invest in killing them. Might just go Aurora here and keep the power on board, but I'm a little worried for Exploring. It's just a Colossus in hand. If he just starts drawing utility, like I said, it could be tricky.
Yeah, really kind of disappointing of the way that the movement had to be done there. Like you said, the 3/4 needed to die. It was just such a good trade into the Colossus. But if Exploring had also been able to use the Toad to trade into the 1/1 and then Aurora, it may have actually been better than Aurora first, because it gets traded in exactly this way.
Yes. So you get that 6 power, right? That 6 power could be relevant just for the 2 fish to run into it, right? So you get that extra fish off.
I think the trades line up almost exactly the same. But yeah, it would have been, I think, a way that Exploring maybe could have forced more awkward trades.
Oh, Aurora picked up here, and he does have the lands actually, and the Faria with the failed experiment. So it might actually be worth going for the Aurora here just to keep some more board presence, but I don't know. It looks like he's just happy to just take the clears and pass on from here and just wait for that Istanu snowball. But 2 Colossus at 4 Faria, that's a good draw.
Yeah, that is actually a really good draw for Exploring here. Has to create the lake because he wants. Actually, didn't have to create the lake. Could have used the Sunken Tower and gone for an extra card draw there. For Exploring, doesn't really have a good use of the Sunken Tower unless he wants to, push the Lore Thief away to ensure Martus isn't collecting next turn.
Yeah, make
But yeah,
that
Martus'
land.
side. Yeah, exactly.
So for Martus, we see Aurora. So he does have the clear on the 7/7 with the Aurora, with the 2 Lore Thieves. Could just failed a lore thief now and just kind of get that free cycle, he might want to keep it for something else. But the creation could be really handy here to get an additional auroras down, making sure that you can continue to apply the pressure.
Unfortunately for Martus, Aurora and Astani really don't line up great into the Colossus. And this is where we see the power that the Colossus has. If Martus had another Carassius in hand, this is an incredible combo where he can put more power on board than the Colossus can keep up with. But both of the power plays out of Martus's side don't trade very well, especially if you're using the failed experiment, because then you're losing even more.
Okay,
Would you
Aurora
like
coming
some
down.
tea?
He's just gonna leave a 6/6 here. Is he gonna take damage? Do you even have the option here to leave a 6/6 on board against blue? With Humblins and Frogifies and all that nonsense, it seems a little risky.
Yeah, it definitely is. The awkward part there is if Martus goes for the trade and you're going 6/6 plus the 1/1 kills off the Colossus. But if you trade in with the 6/6 on that turn, Exploring can push the 7 damage for free to the orb. Whereas leaving it alive, yes, the Humbling or Frogify could come out and you get punished for it, but you're taking less direct orb damage, at least for now.
What do you do here? I guess you can. The Sunken Tower, the double Sunken Tower can be a very powerful combo, but when the lands are all clogged together like this, it can be tricky. Now, I do like pushing the 7/6 down a tile to get out of range of the 6/6. I think that would have been a nice use of the Sunken Tower there because he had the second one in hand to push the land back up if he wants to, and then still be able to push that damage.
Yeah, I definitely could have played around this clear here. Also, very nicely done by Exploring. Killed off Aurora because he knows what the deck is that Martus is playing. You've seen enough pieces that you know it's Carassius creation. The fact that he kills off Aurora there means Martus can't go for Aurora's creation onto Aurora and buff the other lore thief and take the trade and then have his 6/6 survive, potentially having 6/6 and something like Emperor's Command kill off the other Colossus. So it was really nicely traded by Exploring to deny that possible creation play.
Although I think there is an issue with Exploring's play. If that was his plan, he has his own Aurora double collect, and I can't see that card dying anytime.
Very true. Yeah, the creation could have come down onto Exploring's Aurora.
So maybe that's what he was thinking. Like you said, like let's kill the Aurora. Let's remove that option. But with Aurora sitting on the left hand side as well, that could still represent those lines you were talking about. But he just goes for the Istano here. He's just like, I'm gonna get this 5/5 down. He gets the double collect because it gets the haste from the trigger of it dying and taking over the Lore Thief, and actually took over the better Lore Thief of the two.
Yeah, it definitely did because exactly Martus could go for the double collection here rather than having a 5/5 that sits in no man's land, maybe just slamming into a 7/7 for a bad trade. This Asanu here now is just collection though, which ends up kind of awkward as well. It can't really come back over and trade into something, transforming Martus's other creatures into more Astanus. Anything from this side, it can go and take a trade, but it can't actually die in order to get that power onto another creature.
We haven't really seen a response from Martus because of the hand where he's flooded the board again and made that Istanu really effective. And we even see the Emperor's Command come from Exploring here, being able to take care of that creature. So this is Istanu. He's very lonely. He likes to take over other creatures, but not really a lot of options here, especially with Martus only on 6 Spheria and tremendous amounts of pressure on the left-hand side.
Yeah, even at this stage, if the Colossus is cleared for from Exploring side, the toads that are down kind of just represent that chip damage. And because Exploring has board control, it's so difficult for Martis to come back and actually be able to deal with little creatures at this stage unless he's able to find a Carassius.
I think another problem that Martus has encountered was the Sunken Tower moved the lake from the well spot. That well spot on the right corner is really nice because he can just replenish his harvesters quite safely unless there are creatures in range. So even if he was to kill, say, the 2/2 and then set up that collector, then just maybe take a bit more damage and try and set something up next turn, is tricky now, especially again with that Sunken Tower on board. So Sunken Tower is just offering a lot of control, and he has to take a slower line here and hope that he just run the 3/3 into the 1/3 at this point. This is the sad part. It's just very difficult
The
to
other
regain
part of
ball
it,
control.
yeah, the other part of it here is exploring can actually trade the 3/3 into Astanu. It'll transform the Death Touch into just a 5/5 Astanu, and then you deal with the Death Touch that way as well. So either way really works for exploring right now to very easily deal with these creatures.
Well, this is the end of Istanu now. You can just step down, clear it. Istanu is gone. That is it. We're not going to see Istanu again this game. And then just get that really cheap 4/5 jump in the Mystic Beast. And this is looking light sight for Martus. Blue Jump just taking a dominating lead in this.
Yeah, Martus does have a little bit of fairy here where he can, if he finds a Carassius,
I'm so smart.
failed
I
Carassius
stand
and then
myself.
creation it and generate a lot of creatures onto the board to try to come back. But I think going for the Carassius first, if I think it's 4 at this point. So if all of those are able to get cleared, that's essentially just game over, done. There's absolutely nothing you can do. If a single one of these survives and Martus is able to collect and creation of Carassius next turn, then he actually has a big swing back into this game.
You know, now that you've mentioned that, if that is the game plan, do you just take 11 damage this turn and then just kind of Congo line the Carassius into double collection on the right hand side to make sure that they live? And then you get that creation, then you do that board flip. But then again, I guess you can't stop the creatures from being at your orb at that point. So maybe he just has to hope that there's kind of no navigation around these Carassius and he can get another turn.
Yeah, the thing with setting yourself up to take damage on this turn is doing that means that you can't then use the Carassius to actually body block your orb, and your opponent can then hit again on the following turn. Once you've put a ton more onto the board, you're still having an opponent's creature right at the orb. So it is a little awkward to do it that way. But in this situation, it's not going to be enough creatures here. One of these Carassius can actually kill the Colossus, and then you just set up even more around your orb. And I think that exploring is going to be very hard pressed to find a way to punch through for the last bit of damage here.
Yeah, he used Sunken Tower as well to kind of move in and make that damage from the Colossus, but now the Sunken Tower is a bit locked in. It doesn't have as much flexibility as it once had. Gets to clear the Aurora as well, so he does clear his own creation target there, but stopping the double collection without the 4/4 retreating and then going for double collection that way. And now we're just going to see all these fish spawn across the map. And now the Exploring's job is to clear all of these so he can't creation again, but that's going to be very difficult for a Blue Jump to pull off.
Yeah, and now we see exactly that. Everything body blocked in. Unless exploring is running Ninja Toads, then you can maybe punch through for that extra bit of damage. But at this stage, yeah, there it is. Martus able to find the last Carassius that he needed, able to set them all up around his orb, and Martus just knows at that point he's got the game.
So another win for the combo-orientated deck. We've just seen 2 combo so far. We had the Dream Reaver Cannoneer OTK. We're having this is not necessarily an OTK deck, but it's one of those decks where your win condition is pulling off a sequence of cards, and in that case it is a Carassius Flood and making it impossible for Exploring to come back. So it's tricky. I wonder what Exploring's next pick is going to be.
Yeah, I think even at the end of that game, Martus was very close. I think he had about 8 cards left in the deck, and I don't believe there's any healing in there, so maybe Exploring could have reset the board and tried to play for a fatigue win condition. But with that many Carassius on the board, Martus can just move up, and even if it's slowly over the next 3 or 4 turns, he still did have enough time. But we do see, looks like the Rakoan's coming out as the final deck for Exploring.
Now, I haven't seen Rakoans much in competitive play. I have dabbled with the deck myself, but I didn't have the experience or the knowledge to really pilot it that well. I just don't know if Rakoans have the pace required in order to stop this combination going on.
Yeah, that's a great point there. Rakoans is generally a bit of a slower deck unless you can get the early setup correct that you then get a champion early on something like turn 5, and you can push maybe like a 6-6, 7-7 type of body up the board and actually put pressure on that way. But with this, it looks like it might give enough time. The Carassius line up really nicely into a lot of trades, and if Martus is able to do something very similar to what he did last game, it may be that he's able to put enough pressure down. A lot of what this game is going to be is both players really flooding the board, and whoever can take the right trades and start to build up a little bit of value at a time will be able to snowball the game.
But the problem Exploring has, which I don't think Martus really suffers from, is he does have that inevitability. Like at some point, if he doesn't take a commanding lead, Martus will be able to do what he did last game, get that creation combo off and make it impossible for him to get back into the game. So while Exploring can have the pressure, or he can, find the tools he needs to get up there, it can only take one turn for Martus to completely swing the game in his favor.
Yeah, definitely. And we see Exploring going for this early Cannoneer, clear off the Collector on this close side, maybe even goes for the Illusionist, put the Dune Drake, and go aggressive next turn with the 1-1. But it doesn't currently look like he'll be able to use that to then cycle into an aggressive land, just because of the way that Martus is set up.
Martus could open the door here for that Dune Drake play, now putting a target in place where you can get that clear. The Cannoneer is interesting. Like he used a Cannoneer for removal, but I actually feel Cannoneer is one of the only ways you can get around the fish swarm and being able to do direct damage. So I'm not entirely sure I would have used that resource for removal and maybe saved it for burst damage later on.
Right, it's kind of the way that we see red decks play sometimes, where you're looking at, late game, I just need to do enough damage that once I draw my 3 flame bursts, I have 9 damage to hit my opponent with once they've solidified their defenses. Exactly the same as we saw last game, like you're saying, if the Carassius are all set up around the orb and Exploring isn't able to get creature damage through, the Rakoans that are now gone reduces the potential burst that he could have to end the game.
It was 2 damage off from lethal beforehand because he had the sunken tower. Now, while blue doesn't have access to that damage from hand, like the Cannoneers or the flame bursts that we're talking about, in this, I think the experience from that matchup, I think Explorers should be a bit more conservative with these Cannoneers. Don't go for that early board pressure. I don't think it matters really. You can just run your creatures into them and then save that burst damage for later. He might find he needs 3 damage, 6 damage at the end of the game, and he doesn't have it because he's already used it.
Yeah, we do see Exploring kind of pushing up in the way that we've been talking about he probably should be. Martus going for the really nice clear of the Dune Drakes there, but Exploring wants to, like you said, get onto Martus's creatures, get onto the orb before that Carassius combo can come down.
Champion is a really nice pickup here because it does allow him to apply pressure, get that big Rakoan down, and make it do some work. He has a lot of Rakoans on board, so it's going to gain a considerable amount of stats. It's going to go up to 7 if he doesn't squeeze in the Reveler as well, which I think is a little. He can just step back, play the Reveler, and then play the Champion. But now he can't get that extra 1. But I think 7 is fine. Like 7's a good number here because it's just outside of Aurora's reach, which is going to be pretty important here.
Yeah, and I don't believe that we saw any Humblings come out from Martus's deck in the previous game. The other thing is just continue to push that step up. Instead of having to step back with the Cannoneer to play the Reveler and get the extra +1/1 onto the Champion, you're able to step up the Cannoneer, which means you have an extra 3/2 of power instead of a +1/1 buff on the Champion here.
And it's a good trade because it's just outside of Aurora's reach. We're going to see her come down here, the Mythmaker. She's going to clear out the 4/5 there for value, leaving that 7/7 up. it is now in reach of the 2-2. So that's a little problematic. And we're not going to see a body block here because the 7-7 can run into the 3-2, and then the 2-2 is going to clear it anyway. So I think Martus is just accepting that the 6 is probably going to die to the Cannoneer, but he does have that defense from the 7-7.
Right, and this is exactly set up because the Cannoneer was able to step forward from exploring side instead of the extra buff onto the champion. So it is a really nice planning coming out from exploring the way that the trades look like they're going to line up.
One extra lake here is going to enable Curious Biomancer. He might want to not clear first and then get the maximum value of 4 draws off the Curious Biomancer. But doesn't probably not going to do it here. He's probably going to go for a more aggressive line and then just push these up. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure if I was going to play the 4-5, I'd want it to be closer.
Yeah, I think the big thing there for exploring, clear the Aurora, even though the Biomancer could draw that one extra card, you don't want your opponent to have the creation and end up with a good swing turn using Aurora there. So I like the clear from that side. But yeah, like you said, the 4-5, the power of the creatures from exploring here could be further up the board if he maybe waited another turn, just trying to put as much pressure on board as possible.
Oh, this is nice. I didn't see this. The Dune Drake coming down, going to be able to clear that 7-6 of pressure. The 4-5's no longer in a more aggressive position, so can take a slower approach now, slow things down a little bit. Maybe set up some more Carassius just for collection more than anything, and in this part of the game, and then they can double down as defense later on. So Martus definitely stabilizing at this point.
And there we go. The 2 Carassius currently represent killing off the Chieftain. Like you mentioned a little earlier, the Cannoneers, if exploring still had them in hand, would be really good in this situation.
Well, he was very concerned with the early game Faria collection that Martus had available to him with all those little creatures.
I'm so smart.
But ultimately, I don't think it was a big deal. And now he goes for the Biomancer. It does pick a Majanata, so he does have that kind of bursty 10 Faria play, making one of these Rakoans mobile and maybe able to find some damage. But at 20 life, Martus is still in a pretty decent position, especially with Doomgate. That's when the cycle starts coming. He finds those creations in his Stanos.
Yeah, but the rest of the hand being those failed experiments, not really great for Martus unless he's able to find a good creature to use it on. And having the Doomgate right now, if he has to use that, his only choice is to use it on the Illusionist. And then if you don't draw something, you're really far behind.
So the draw there and finds the Emperor's Command. No creatures available, like you said. He can't really establish that economy easily. Now, he could roll the dice here and see if the Doomgate picks up anything worthwhile with a cycle, but doesn't do it. He agrees with you. Keep the economy going that he knows he has instead of going for that draw.
Gift of the Rakoa now picked up from exploring could be very good. We've already seen one champion gone. We've seen 2 of the chieftains. So some of the kind of big bodies of this deck are starting to thin out. So Gift of the Rakoa could be a very big swing point for exploring to put another big threat down.
14 Fairy is pretty dangerous for Martus here if Exploring gets access to that. The Maginata Gift of Rakoa combo could just be a lethal out of nowhere if he's not careful. Especially now we're seeing the Flood. These Rakoans are coming down. There's a nice conga line of them on the right-hand side to collect Inferior. It may only take a couple of hits from some beefy Rakoans to get him in range of that Maginata Gift of Rakoa combo.
Yeah, exploring at the end of his turn there, actually emoting that was a mistake. I think he was maybe leaning towards the Illusionist onto the Biomancer and go across with the Dune Drake and clear off the Illusionist on Martus' side. Unfortunately, he played the little 1/1 Rakoan on the desert that he needed for the Illusionist, so he was no longer able to go for that play with the Biomancer. But at this point, you maybe just Maginata next turn, you maybe just put a few more creatures down and Gift of the Rakoa make something really big. He wants to start pushing damage to the orb.
He doesn't even have to use that for lethal. Like you said, he can just use it for pressure because once that creature dies, Marginata is going to show up. It's a very sticky creature, Marginata, very difficult to deal with protection and divine. So you have to knock off a damage onto it first, but you can't target it. So it becomes that really annoying creature, which probably has to take a few hits from maybe like a 1-1, and then Istanu might have to run into it and trade with it, and hopefully it can respawn. So maybe this is it. Just go for it. Like you just chuck Marginata down, maybe on the 3-4. How much damage can you push from this? Plus 5/5. So you could push 9 damage if the Biomancer went in as well.
We see the Frog Tosser come down, which means exploring looks like he's going to favor the Gift of the Rakoa instead. Just put more and more creatures onto the board.
I like +1 into Shieldmate then if you're going to go for that strategy. Or you +1. Oh, or you just play Illusionist, turn the 3-4 into a Dune Drake, and then gift the Rakoa on the Biomancer, and you push even more damage.
Yeah, looks like exploring leaning towards that option. Does lose 1 buff from the Gift of the Rakoa this turn because you are essentially -1 Rakoan with that transformation, but you also push 4 more damage that you wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. So really nice from exploring there to go for the Dune Drake exactly as you pointed out.
The Rakoan's able to find a win there. Had a slow start with the land development, but the Cannoneers in the end, just chipped away at that economy. So ultimately, it seems like Exploring felt comfortable enough to use those Cannoneers to chip at the resources in the early game rather than saving it for that lethal play, having access to stuff like Marginata and Gift of Rakoa, which will lead us to our final game, Red-Yellow. And like you said, it looks more like a control variant because of the inferior cost of the deck.
Yeah, no, if this is running a lot of the red removal that we generally think of, especially in more of like the burn variant, it is something where Martus can actually get very good value out of Ground Shaker onto the small creatures, get very good value out of things like Cypher's Wrath. Unfortunately, seeing that Disrupted Volley in hand probably doesn't have any good targets, but seeing the Bloodsinger potentially could be very good for Martus here if he's able to establish, and then all of the red AoE effects, the targeted effects, and just clear everything off can actually burn down this Rakoan deck.
So once again, Martus bring in a deck where he kind of sits back, does what he wants, and has a win condition. And in this case, it is going to be burn. So he's going to chip away slowly with the Bloodsingers, use that removal. So it's probably like 3 Divine Guardians, 3 Bloodsingers, and that may be all the creatures, maybe a couple of Ground Shakers. But most of the deck's going to be like Fire Bombs, Destructive Volleys, you might see some Last Nightmares, or maybe even Wind Soldiers. So lots of chip damage and using that Bloodsinger to let it add up and maybe burst from hand later on.
Right, and we see the early Divine Guardian here, meaning Exploring actually does have to switch sides. He cannot allow a far side creature that can't be targeted to survive the entire game. That'll just fuel the economy for Martus so that every single turn he can go for Ground Shaker, Cypher's Wrath if he needs the AoE. He eventually could build up a big enough fairy pool that Garridan just absolutely decimates everything that Exploring has on board. So Exploring knows he has to put something on this side so that eventually when the Illusionist was picked up, which we now see, the Dune Drake can go and kill off the Guardian.
It's kind of sad though because you want to kill both of them, and you have to pick one side. The Bloodsinger represents damage over time. The Divine Guardian represents Failure Generation, which can't be challenged from removal from hand. So those Cannoneers don't end up being very useful. But like you said, the Rakoan Illusionist play, you get that Dune Drake and it doesn't take any damage. So the chances of it being Cypher's Wrath or Soul Drain are limited, and it might allow an early push and a bit more pressure.
We'll need one more turn before Exploring will be able to pull that off with the Dune Drake, just because it only has the charge
so
too.
smart, I astound myself.
And this is actually an awkward lineup for Exploring as well, because the Cannoneer dealing 3 damage really doesn't help against these early creatures that have 4 life. There's no really good way to deal that 1 extra that he needs.
Yeah, a little tricky. Getting that extra one damage, maybe not easy for Rakoans to find. Don't have access to those ground shakers. Just gonna go for the Cypher's Wrath here, and then Derelict Tower. Now, this is the beauty of Bloodsinger, right? In this style of deck, you get to remove threats, but also deal direct damage at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. We see 4 damage dealt there, where if the Bloodsinger wasn't on board, it only would have been the 2 coming out from the Cypher's Wrath. But a really great pickup from Martus to find the Wrath there, because it deals with the creature from exploring, which would have been in range to be the Dune Drake play. So doesn't even have to step back the Divine Guardian to play around that.
He gets to step back next turn if there isn't an aggressive creature developed. Now we've seen the mountain come down, so we might just see a Reveler come down in that position, maybe a Chieftain, to try and push up against this Guardian. Actually, he's going to retreat and then go for the Reveler. So this can be transformed into the June Drake, and the Divine Guardian's not going to be able to escape unless that removal shows up.
Marty's just not finding kind of his mid-range creatures that he really needs at this point. If he had something like a Ground Shaker that could contest into all these creatures really well, he'd be set up so nicely at the early game here. But just finding these small creatures that really don't fight that well, Leia will represent a bit of control over this side. But again, the Illusionist in hand from exploring, I think you're still fine just trading away the Dune Drake.
The issue is the structure stops collection for the Divine Guardian. So that could be a little bit of a problem going forward as well. We're probably going to see the structure taken care of eventually, but exploring can actually time the clear of it, so it's more inconvenient for Martus depending on how the lands are developed and how the play goes over the next few turns. But like you said, just kill it with a June Drake. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and even the structure, as you're saying there, blocks the collection. It also blocks the mountain for Martus. So if he's is able to find a creature that does very well into everything that exploring has developed on that side, that mountain is blocked, and Martus will have to develop another one. And the other mountain on the other side is now blocked by the Derelict Tower as well. So it kind of is ending up being really awkward in the lands right now for Martus, in the way that everything we expect to play out.
I'm just wondering if you double neutral in this situation, talking about land awkwardness, you could really push some aggressive lands following up towards this Divine Guardian. And then, like, the next mountain probably comes in the center, but then you have access to developing aggressive special lands all around the orb. So I would have actually liked to have seen uh, the double neutral there, but just goes for the clear. So I'm gonna use the Cannoneer in this situation. Then he's just gonna Cannoneer and not bother being vulnerable to that death touch, because you do lose the fairy advantage from the Reveler because it's a June Drake. It's no longer the Reveler and loses that last word.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, they're exploring taking extra damage because the Reveler needs to sacrifice a creature. So the Bloodsinger continues to deal the burn damage that it wants to.
Another little chip at the life there, but exploring in a good position. He has a lot of pressure up the left-hand side. And like you said, Martus, lands are awkward. He's kind of whiffing on the draws a little bit. The Ground Shaker's nice. It's going to allow a double collection. But, oh no, he won't. He won't be able to. He doesn't have the mountain. So he has to choose to collect off the bottom well, or does he Ground Shaker Derelict Tower to get that extra damage from Bloodsinger? A bit more control. Very tricky.
Yeah, it definitely is really tricky, because if you go for the step up with the Bloodsinger for the double collection, that also puts the Bloodsinger in range of the shield mates if exploring makes the land down in the bottom right corner. And that could actually mean more damage on following turns. But
Oh, wow.
yeah, it goes for it there, so gonna entirely skip the Ground Shaker for this turn.
So Ground Shaker skip, just setting up preemptively for it to go off when that land becomes available again. We're probably going to see a clear on the structure anyway, so now the land has been freed up for that Ground Shaker. What does Exploring really want to do? You could Lani for gas, just gas up with Lani, get loads of threats, and then maybe even pull another champion and be able to apply that pressure.
Yeah, the weird thing for Rakoans is you are so dependent on making all of these special lands that you almost run out of space to play all of your creatures. Exploring can do whatever he wants out of his hand right now, but he's just limited on the actual available space he has on board to play them. So it does end up kind of being awkward sometimes for the Rakoans to get everything out of hand that they want to.
Once again, we have the conga line going up the left. So a lot of pressure there is available. We do see a choking sand, so some hard removal, but not really going to hit anything. He does have Last Nightmare, so he can just kind of collect Nightmare, Ground Shaker. Like, could Nightmare the top Rakoan here, which is the Chieftain, and then have that Ground Shaker ready to challenge the one below it.
Yeah, and that'll give Martus kind of an extra turn as well, because it won't be enough pressure from the creatures on this left side to actually kill the Ground Shaker, and then you're really relying on whatever you draw next. If Martus goes for the Ground Shaker here and the Last Nightmare, then the Ground Shaker can't immediately be cleared, and it just gives you a little bit more time on the following turn.
I do like Nightmare in this situation, just to clear out the top Chieftain, just to protect the Ground Shaker's life, force a little bit extra from Exploring's hand in this position. And we're seeing that chip damage is now 50% of Exploring's life, so it's not going to take much else. If he draws stuff like Flame Burst and Cypher's Wrath, he can really accelerate things if this Bloodsinger doesn't get answered.
Yeah, the Bloodsinger is just uncontested on the right now, and it's achieving everything that Martus wants. It's double collecting for extra Feria economy, and it's getting all that chip damage, like you mentioned. This is one Cypher's Wrath was the only thing that directly dealt damage to Exploring's life total. The other 8 the Ground Shaker did 1 as well. So the other 7 damage has come from things dying on Exploring's side of the board, and the 1 damage coming through from the Bloodsinger. It's just done a phenomenal amount of work this game.
And it's playing into the cards like the Illusionist, like the Frog Tossers, against stuff like Ground Shaker. They're going to trade. And that's 1 more damage going to Exploring's Orb. And it's only a matter of time for Martus, that inevitability that is Flame Burst and Cypher's Wrath. He has the targets. He can just win the game that way. But he actually goes for the Bloodsinger here. Like we said, it's getting a lot of value. It's time to get...
Yeah, and very well sequenced by Exploring here. If he's going to go for one of these Chieftains trade in and the Cannoneer as the second bit of burst, planning to kill off the Ground Shaker that way, you need to go for the Frog Tosser first to kill off the Bloodsinger. Otherwise, you take 2 more damage than you otherwise would. So really nicely sequenced by Exploring to end up with that.
Oh, is it YOLO Hellfire time? Oh, he picks up the Soldering. That's good. So we can right side clear, stop that double collection, set up the Guardian again. So he can get that double collection going uncontested, because I have Divine, so it cannot be targeted. Only June Drakes will be the biggest concern. And then just save the Hellfire for later on when the board's been more cleared up.
Oh, he is going to rip the Hellfire after all. Oh, and it clears everything except leaving 1 life alive on the Chieftain. That is huge for Exploring here. He's going to still be able to clear off the Ground Shaker.
Yeah, that's. I don't know if you Hellfire in that situation. I think it's too big of a gamble, because you want the Hellfire hits to hit the Orb, really, to set up lethal later on for potential other Hellfires, Flame Bursts. But because the creature soaked up so much damage, and it didn't even kill the most important creature, which was the 4/1, it does give Exploring that window to start applying pressure.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if you were going to go for the Hellfire in that spot, do you +1 Last Nightmare the 4/4 Chieftain and then Hellfire? Because that takes 2 more damage away, and instead of the 3 damage that hit the Chieftain there, it could have been 2 damage onto the Toad that was Soul Drained instead. Maybe could have lined up the Hellfire procs a little better, but Martus went for it that way, and now it is Exploring, pushing up the board, had the Cannoneer to finish off the Ground Shaker.
Still can get 1 damage here from a +1 Bloodsinger Choking Sands play. Stick the Bloodsinger in that safety zone again. I think that's what he's going to go for here. Just clear out the 3/4, limit that damage coming in next turn. And, cross your fingers. Hope you draw those Flame Bursts and those other removal pieces in order to finish the game.
Yeah, at this stage for Martus, it's just time. You're essentially just waiting on finding Flame Burst. If you can get the extra bit of damage from Bloodsinger, then that reduces, maybe you only need 2 Flame Bursts instead of 3, but oh, positioning here ends up being Exploring will be able to trade this if he wants to.
He did. I don't understand this. I guess he just wants to soak some damage here and just accepting that the Bloodsinger is probably going to die to a Frog Tosser anyway. Might as well put in a position where it can challenge the 4-1. But that's an interesting line.
All right, as we mentioned, there's Flame Burst number 1 from Martus. And a Cypher's Wrath, 5 damage right now, so he will be looking for just another Wrath or Flame Burst, even potentially a Derelict Tower if he can get one in a more protected spot, down into like the bottom right corner or something. He has a lot of time right now because there's not a lot of damage coming through from Exploring in the way that actually ends the game within 2 turns before Martus can find the extra burst. And even if that is the case, the Divine Guardian will give him an extra turn of safety anyway.
Oh man, it's just it's top deck mode. Martus has enough life to just kind of sit there and get maybe 2 top decks in order to find that final damage. We can see a champion come down this turn, just get that pressure, develop that 7/7, and maybe set up lethal on the follow up. But it's just so scary. I think Exploring just has to make his strongest line and go from there. Like, that's all you can do at this point. Martus could just draw lethal, but you make your strongest play to set up lethal for this next turn, and if you survive, well, hey, if you don't, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it looks like Exploring potentially goes for... Okay, so the Dune Drake again pushing more damage this turn, exactly the same that we saw in the previous game, and the champion comes down as that lethal representation on the follow-up. Also going for killing the Divine Guardian with the Toad instead of pushing more damage means that the Toad represents killing off the Divine Guardian, and then you still have all this damage to push through, but it's on the top deck. If Martus can find what he needs, he'll be able to end the game.
Here we go. So Bloodsinger, that's actually not enough here. He needs to take that final draw. Picks up Hellfire. Oh my goodness.
Oh, the YOLO Hellfire, I don't believe will ever be enough here. The only way you survive this is if Hellfire clears 2 of the creatures at your own orb, but it's so unlikely that this does 5.
Oh, he did it.
He did get it for now, but I still don't think there's enough time. You still have no way to clear off the champion, plus whatever else Exploring plays that'll end up being the lethal here. And Martus doesn't have the Fairy in next turn now because he used 7 for the Hellfire. He just doesn't have enough to go Flame Burst, or Flame Burst Cypher's Wrath. I don't think any way Martus pulls this out at this point.
Yes, it was unfortunate. He did actually get the pings he needed. I'm not. Did one go to the frog as well?
One went onto the frog. Yeah.
Yeah. So if that went face, that would have been lethal. So he was rolling the dice anyway.
One hit the frog and one hit the champion that's still on the board because it's damaged as well. So if either of those pings had hit, and there is the Cypher's Wrath. If Martus had one more Fairy at this stage, he would actually win the game.
Oh my goodness. What a match. So close. 1 life each player. But Exploring is going to win in this nail-biting series. 2 opponents perfectly matched for each other here. Exploring moves on to the next round, but a good run from Martus, showing us some spicy combo OTK decks in his line.
Yeah, and I believe Exploring is the first qualified into the semi-finals now as well.
There we have it. Exploring taking semis. His journey in this seasonal cup is still underway. More matches are going to come from him in the future. We may even see him in the grand finals. Martus unfortunately falling here with that spicy lineup, but it was a pleasure to cast his games and see the decks that he brought. So yeah, well played to both players.